Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Design Review Board and Tree Board meeting of July 23rd, 2024. Susie, would you do a roll call for us?
Chair Lingberg.
Here.
Vice Chair Hanley.
Here.
And Board Member Bush.
Here.
All 3 members are here. 2 members are absent. And that is the attendance.
Great. Thank you. So we have old and new minutes to approve, but if I'm not mistaken, we don't have a quorum of people from those meetings who are here today. I looked through them and I don't think that we can move ahead with that. So we'll go on to Planning Department update from our Planning Department over there. You want to wait for John? We could push it to the end, I guess. You want to just do that? Okay. So moving on to comments from the public regarding items that are not on the agenda. Anybody in their audience want to speak for 2 minutes on items not on the agenda? Seeing none there, there's a hand up on the Zoom screen. I recognize that hand.
You hear me?
Yes, Linda, please go ahead. You have 2 minutes to talk about an item that's not on the agenda today.
Yes. So anyway, I'd just like to remind you all that the city is in financial distress, frankly, it's on the brink of bankruptcy. And in my opinion, it's largely due to the dysfunction and the lack of communication between, agencies, entities like yours. And the city council, the planning commission, and multiple other people, or agencies, entities. Anyway, it's a mess, And so anyway, I am encouraging you all to start paying attention to what other entities, like the decisions being made, participate, frankly, in the city council meetings. And also, we desperately need better leadership. We've got a mayor who disrespects our cops, our wonderful exemplary cops, and also firefighters every chance. And she also silences us, the public, and does not listen to our ideas or our input. So anyway, I am encouraging anybody that's interested at all in running for the 2 positions that are open now for the city council, and also
30 seconds.
What? And also I'm encouraging. I hope that that you do not join with the planning commission because we need more independent voices as much as possible. And I'd also like to echo that this canopy project is an environmental disaster, and we need to stop building here because we are creating not only heat islands,
2 minutes are up.
More disaster. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Linda. Was that dramatic music that ends the 2 minutes, or that was weird? It was like the Oscars. You got to cut off your speech, right? That was strange. Yeah, maybe we should try that every time. Okay. Any other comments on Zoom for items not on the agenda? Okay. Seeing none, then any statements of conflicts of interest from the board?
Well, yeah, item C is the third agenda on the item, and I do have a conflict of interest for a proximity conflict within 500 foot of the hot monk for a personal property. So I won't be participating in that agenda hearing.
Thank you.
And I have a conflict on item B for proximity. I also have personal property within 500 feet of Campanella.
Campanella Restaurant. Okay. Thank you for that, both of you. Thank you for your honest disclosures. Okay, so we'll move on to our first agenda item, 7A at 555 Norlee Street, the Village Green. We have an application to remove 3 trees. So John is here to give us a staff report on the Norlee Street project, if you would be so kind.
Absolutely. So this is a tree removal permit request from the Covert Lane Homeowners Association at 555 Norlee Street. The project applicant is seeking to remove 2 protected trees, Douglas firs, and 1 tulip tree at Covert Lane and Norlee Street, also referred to as Village Green. The application proposes to remove, as I said, 2 Douglas firs. One of them is 31 inches in diameter and is roughly 30 feet tall and is leaning towards unit number 537 on the property.
Could you make sure you speak loudly and clearly enough?
Sure.
I would like to hear what the last sentence was.
The applicant is seeking to remove a Douglas fir, which is about 30 inches in diameter and roughly 30 feet tall, and is leaning towards unit 537. The second Douglas fir is 17 inches in diameter and is noted within the applicant's arborist report that is suffering from a red ring fungus. The tulip tree has surface roots visible on the lawn and have lifted the adjacent sidewalk. Ben Anderson, serving as the city arborist, reviewed the application and conducted a site visit and prepared the arborist report dated July 2nd, 2024, and is attached in the applicant package today. The summary of the report states that the property is well forested with many mature trees, and the most common species are Doug fir, tulip, and coast redwoods. As part of the report, Ben Anderson is recommending that the 2 Douglas fir trees be denied for removal today based on the comments as part of his report, and also the tulip tree, as the size does not meet the requirements, as it's not a native tree in our ordinance and is not of 20 inches in diameter, that it does not require a tree removal permit as part of our ordinance and is up to the project applicant should they want to remove that tree or not. Furthermore, the 2 other trees do not meet any findings required for removal, and both fir trees can be mitigated through standard tree work. So with that, I will conclude my staff report. Ben Anderson, the city arborist, is here on the call to answer any questions that the board may have. And I believe we have a couple folks from the HOA to answer any questions.
I didn't catch what you said about the 2 conifers and mitigated. What was the idea after that about those 2?
That he is not recommending removal of those 2 trees, and that standard tree work can be proposed to keep those trees alive and not removed.
Thank you, John. Any questions for staff, either John or the arborist? Ben, from the board? Melissa, no questions? Gary?
I'd like to hear from maybe Ben. Hey, Ben, maybe we could just get a just synopsis from you regarding your report, if there were any specific notes or findings that you can just educate us as the board from having been on site and reviewed the trees at probably greater length.
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, Ben. Thank you.
Yeah.
Did anyone go to the site, or have you been there before? Just is anyone familiar with it?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So there's a lot of big trees on the site, including redwoods and Douglas firs and tulip trees. I guess I don't need to talk about the tulip tree because that is not really part of the permit. It's really just those 2 Douglas firs. There's, I think in John's summary, there was a mistake about the height of the larger tree. The tulip tree was 30 feet tall. The big Douglas fir is quite a lot taller than that. I didn't measure it, but it might be something 70 or 80 feet tall. It's a big tree. It does have a structural defect, the codominant trunks. That is a defect that can be a little bit divisive when it comes to removal. It's one of the more common serious failures that you see is a failure from a codominant trunk higher in the tree, but it's also a very common defect. And there's trees all throughout the landscape that have that and don't fail. And this tree has been this way for decades and hasn't failed. And it doesn't look like anything's changed in the tree recently that would make me think it's more likely to fail soon. And standard tree work could be done to preserve it. If somebody really liked that tree, you could shorten one of the 2 leaders, connect them with a cable, prune the tree overall to make it smaller and reduce the force it's acting on the weak union. The smaller tree is in the interior of the stand. It has what we call a low live crown ratio. So all of the foliage is in the top part of the tree. Most of the tree doesn't have living foliage on it. So it can look a little bit scraggly if you're just standing in the stand looking at it, but that's really common for an interior tree. The red ring rot is one of the 2 most common fungi that'll work on Douglas fir trees. It just rots the middle of the tree. It doesn't kill the living tissue on the outside, and it's not known to go after the roots. So it's basically just making the tree into a tube so that it's hollow in the middle and then has sound wood on the outside. And it becomes about how thick that sound wood ring is around the outside. And I sounded it with my hammer and it sounded good all the way around. I see a lot of Douglas fir trees with red ring rot in them, and there was only one conch, so that's the mushroom, the fruiting body that's sitting on the outside of the trunk. There was only one there, which usually that means there's not a lot. It hasn't become really established in the tree. So trees can stand with red ring rot for a long time. It's by no means something that means that you have to take down the tree.
Thanks, Ben. Yeah, Melissa has a question for you. Go ahead.
Ben, I'm wondering if you could extrapolate a bit on the statement, if you remove trees from the edge of a stand, the remaining trees will be exposed to wind and other elements that they have not previously been exposed to. This may destabilize the remaining trees. Could you kind of quantify that a little bit more for us, or explain the risk of removing these trees and exposing the other trees to wind forces?
Yeah, that quote is actually from the applicant's arborist's report. So I pulled that out of his report because I thought it was germane, since we would be removing a big tree from the outside. It's not, that's not something that I put in my report because it's like part of my thought process. But that is something that people talk about, the edge effect. It's like most prevalent in forestry, where you've got like a full forest and you remove a chunk of the forest, and then you have a bunch of trees on the outside that used to be interior trees, like that little one with the red ring rot, that now aren't being protected from wind by all those trees that used to be around them or on the outside. So, I mean, I think the thought process there from Merlin, because he doesn't really expand on that in his report, he just has that line in there, but I think he's just kind of raising the concern that if you start pulling trees off the edge, that these interior trees are going to be hit with more wind, and that may impact their stability. And I mean, there's something to that, but at the same time, I see trees removed from the outside of stands in the urban environment all the time, and I can't think of a time that I've seen an interior tree fail after that. So it's not made up. That is the thing. It's not something I'm super concerned about.
Thank you.
And then to the other bigger Doug fir that's leaning towards a building, from what staff said, you're saying that with pruning or tree work on that tree could help it sort of lean away or not lean more towards the building. Is that correct?
I mean, you're not going to change the lean of the trunk. That's going to be there. You can
Right.
prune so that the center of gravity of the tree shifts to be further away from that house. You know, you can shorten all those branches that are extending towards the house to reduce the leverage pulling it that way. But yeah, the main concern about that tree is that the main codominant union splitting apart. Not so much, or for me anyway, and I don't think it was mentioned in the Merlin report, that we're really worried about the whole tree falling over because the root system looks really healthy. There's no mushrooms there, and it's all tied into the roots of the rest of the trees in the stand. The real concern is that codominant union, and that can be supported with like normal tree work.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ben. Any other questions for staff?
Could you ask him to elaborate what is normal tree work? I'd like to hear what he means by that.
Well, I think in his report, he had a couple recommendations, including cabling the two trunks together, pruning the side towards the house. Is that right, Ben? Anything you want to add to that for to our audience here?
People also commonly will subordinate one of the two leaders. So if one of them, and in this tree, it is this way, there's a larger one and a smaller one. So you can cut the smaller one more aggressively than the larger one so that you get that trunk kind of taking over as the dominant. And then the next time the tree is pruned, you can cut that smaller one back even more so that you're moving away from that codominant union with one of them getting bigger and the other one staying about the same size.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
I'm the owner of 537. If that tree falls, it's my unit that's going to fall.
Okay. You can make that comment shortly. You can have your turn here in a minute. So I think we are good with our staff report for the moment. So we can take comments from the public now. So if there's someone in the audience, you can come up to the podium and have 2 minutes to discuss. Would you like to start? You want to come up and sure, yeah. We'll do one in the audience, and then if there's someone on Zoom, we'll switch over to. So actually, excuse me one second, John. So do we have an applicant in the room or on Zoom?
I think, I know that Cindy wasn't able to make it today, but she was going to send, I think, the property owner as kind of
Perfect.
and president
Okay.
of ours. So
All right.
I don't know if you want to, if this would be your questions, if you guys have questions to the applicant, this would be that time now. And then public comment, I would,
Right.
as far as your house location, I would make those comments towards in the public comment phase. But as far as right now, if there's questions that the board may have, as you're the president of the board, we can answer those questions now. And then when we get to public comment, you can make your, as a member of the community there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I also have another member of the board here also.
Okay. Yeah. So if you
we're-
could tell us your name and then just give a sort of a presentation of why what the application is about.
Okay. I'm not sure, but I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
Sounds-
Valerie Conger, and I'm president of the Homeowners Association. And I thought that we could remove these trees because one of them is leaning right over my unit. And I'm a little bit nervous about it going. I don't really want to rebuild the whole thing. And also there's a grove of trees. And if one goes, it's going to take down other trees. So that's my concern because I don't live there, but I live on a property where a tree was leaning and it finally went, but luckily it wasn't near the house. So it can happen with the right conditions. And I know the arborist doesn't think so, but I think so because that's a grove of trees and it used to be a Christmas tree farm. So it's been there a long, long, long time. And I appreciate the board taking the time to review this, and hopefully they will follow the recommendations of whoever said they need to be removed and why. Okay?
Thank you for that. Before you go, are there any questions for applicant from the board? Melissa? Or? No? Okay.
Okay, and I'm not an arborist, so.
Okay. Well, so you can stay up there if you'd like to make a comment as a member of the public, or is that you're good? That works. Now, if you'd like to. Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Thanks, Valerie. So then if we have a comment on Zoom. for public,
Yeah, so the procedure we'll do in chambers first,
which we just did.
we just did, and then we'll go to Zoom, and then we'll go back to in chambers, and then back and
Yes.
forth.
So if we want to go to Zoom for a comment on the item on the agenda for the Village Green.
Linda, you should be good.
Oh, hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, Linda.
Huh. No, I appreciate your meetings because they're educational. I had no idea that Village Green used to be a tree farm. And get to learn things about trees. I'm curious about whether Douglas fir has a taproot like redwoods that go out kind of laterally. But anyway, it seems to me that a case has been made that the trees can be saved and cut back, trimmed, so that will alleviate some of the risk of their falling over or something like that. Also, I find it interesting. Who knew that about mushrooms can indicate damage to the roots, I guess. So there's that. But along with this, I'm still trying to beat the drum to hope that you can save a whole bunch of other trees, specifically at the canopy, which is our last best open space, and we need open spaces. In the meantime, the city, and the planning commission, everybody's going with build, baby, build, and we have a 10 or 11 projects in the pipeline with
30
infrastructure
seconds.
we don't have. So anyway, I'm hoping that you will kind of reverse your positions, particularly about the trees and the whole canopy project. And going back to this tree issue, I think that it sounds like the trees can be trimmed and so that they'll be safe. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. So we'll come back to the folks in the room. Is there anyone else who would like make the public comment? Okay, come on up. Tell us your name and you have 2 minutes.
My name is Peter Conroy. I'm on the board at the Village Green. And I actually have a comment and a question. How high to what height did you sound that trunk on the second tree? I mean, I'm a little bit confused, but you can assess that it's hollowed just at your height?
You talking about the tree that has the red ring rot?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, the conch for the red ring rot was at somewhere around 4 or 5 feet, and it's going to be typically where the decay is.
Okay.
But yeah, I was sounding it, as high as I could reach, and then down to grade, and it all sounded good.
Yeah. Okay. And my comment is the first tree in question. I mean, I don't know if you've looked at those trees, but it is quite distorted, and it is leaning towards the buildings. And I just know that PG&E was out at my farm looking at a tree, and it was actually the similar structure, and they said it's got to come down. That's going to fall and knock out the power lines. And so I'm just going to say there's arborists and there's a lot of opinions, and I think PG&E is liable if they're wrong. And I'm not sure our arborist here is. I don't know if there's any liability, as Bell was pointing out. If that goes down, I guess the city just goes, "Oh, sorry," and And the homeowner goes, gee, that's really too bad. But I'm heartened to hear that, like, that you are open
30
to
seconds.
mitigation. And I think it could be mitigated, but pretty aggressively. And I'd have to be educated as to why they're picking on the smaller lead. But I think they'd be going after the one that looks like could come down on our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So there's a hand up, but I think it's the one that's already gone. So we'll come back to the room. And anybody else like to make a comment? Do you have? You do.
Public process.
It's, yeah.
When you say, didn't you say you were going to trim it back or something? Is that my understanding, instead of pulling it out or cutting it down?
Well, that's in the recommendations from the city arborist, that could be done instead of taking the tree down.
Yeah, well, my objection to that is aesthetically, it would look like, pardon my French, but hell. I don't think it would be aesthetically good to do that. I think it would look like a botch job. I know I have a fruit tree and it had some dead limbs on it, and our worker trimmed them back, and here's a stick with a few, leaders, and it's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I don't think aesthetically that would be feasible. That's all.
Okay. Thank you for that comment. Any other members of the public who'd like to speak on this item? Would you like to come up to the podium? You have 2 minutes.
My name is L'Oreal Golden Hawk. I'm the executive producer for Timeless Sound Music Productions. We'll be having an ongoing series to be known as Concerts for the Trees. The purpose of it is to raise enough love and money to protect the last 4% remaining of ancient pristine redwoods and the few percent remaining of oak woodlands in Sonoma County. With only a few percent of Mother Earth's trees left, we must make taking action to heal Mother Earth by protecting her last trees, last forests. Now, trees and forests drive the water-air cycle for planet Earth. Our community is a local microcosm for the whole planet. The decisions we make here for every tree in Sebastopol affect life on the entire planet. That's how God designed the earth. I agree with what you said, Val. I totally agree. When you said we shouldn't mutilate the trees because it's ugly, I agree. We need beauty and inspiration as much as we need food for our bodies. Remember that these trees are homes to endangered birds, endangered squirrels. We are in the 6th mass extinction. These are the last birds, the last squirrels. Look around, guys. Where are the bees that we've seen all our lives? Lower and lower and lower. So if any of these trees are ill, I know the nutrients. I know what they need. I live 15 feet from the 2 conifers, and I live 40 or 50 feet from the tulip. I know what the tulip situation is. The president of the HOA receives more than $200,000 a year. The pipes that are their water can be replaced easily, and I will do everything in my power. I'm soon to receive my inheritance. If I have to hire a lawyer to protect these 3 trees, I will be in the position to do it, and I'm writing articles for all local media, all local newspapers, all social media. So names will be named if any of those trees go down or are mutilated, like the tree board decided for the conifer last October. Now I'm in gear. So we're
Okay,
going to
thank
love the
you.
trees and heal them if they're sick, or replace the plumbing with the over $200,000 a year the HOA collects in the homeowners' fees. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Leslie, for filming. You bet the public's going to see this film with all of us on it, or at least me. Thank you, and may peace, love, and courage prevail.
Thank you for your comment. Any other public comment? There's no one on Zoom, so if you'd like to speak, now's your chance. Come on up.
My name's Bevan Tremblay. I worked in the schools of Sebastopol and Occidental and Harmony schools here. And so one of my favorite books is by Dr. Seuss. And so I'm here to speak for the trees. And so, you know, I'm concerned about people who own property. I understand that they need protection, but somebody, you know, who can't, you know, these trees can't vote. So I speak for the trees. So from their point of view, I looked at them, I hugged them. They all seem healthy. They all seem like they would like to live. So consider the trees' point of view. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So I think that's all we have for public comment that I can tell on the screen or here. So we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Who would like to start? Right or left?
So I guess I still have a couple questions in some way we can talk about as board, but there's quite a few units in Village Green, and I'm curious to know how many of the units have been part of this process. And I wonder, you know, are they all on the same page in regards to the holistic approach to the management of the property? Because essentially that's what it comes to in a lot of ways. A lot of these trees are dependent on each other, and to remove one again becomes an issue for others. So where I'm trying to understand is we have two bodies from the same, you know, housing unit, and they're in different directions. So as a board, I'm trying to understand how does that influence, right, this process. In addition to my other question, a little bit going towards staff, is what is the liability actions allowable in the case of, we keep the trees and then the trees fail, and how does that become a litigation conversation within city rights or homeowners' rights?
For one, I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question. I think that's a city attorney question that we would have to have answered, and we wouldn't be able to have that answered today. But it's something that maybe we can look into in the future and provide, you know, report out to the board as far as what the consequences of either removal or denial or approval of a permit, and, you know, the opposite happens where something does go wrong, and what the next steps are for that. So to that question, I don't think I can answer. To your other question, as far as the, you know, the kind of overall consensus of the rest of the community there, I think that would probably be an appropriate question for the president of the HOA or the management company. I don't know if they're ready to answer that question today or not, but I feel like that would one of those people would be the correct person to answer that question.
I have information. I have about 30 signatures on members of our community for the other tree that went down, and I've gotten more. I have a total of at least 50 people who live in the complex and in the neighborhood who want every tree on this property protected and loved as much as I do.
Okay.
I can show you their names. There's plenty of people that would make this a democratic process. Thank you so much, Derek. We need to introduce democracy. We're a community here, not just a king and a queen and the lower ones. We really do need democracy.
Yes, okay, thank you.
And more than half are renters. I don't know about the 50 signatures.
They don't have voting rights, so to speak. Uh-huh. So could we actually, can we not have this discussion in the audience, please? So Carrie, would you like, we could invite the president to come up and answer that question?
I think it's fair, sure.
Valerie, could you do that? Just sort of let us know in this, application or your desire to remove the trees, do you notify everyone, or how does that process work?
There's notices on all the trees that are going to be removed, so everybody has a chance to look. However, renters do not have any say. It's the owners that have the say in what happens at Village Green. Renters have no authority at all. There's 39 units. I don't know how she has 50 signatures because there aren't that many owners.
Neighbors and neighboring streets can't share.
They don't count, Lori. They don't count. They have no authority.
So you're correct. Of course, the trees are identified by the city in this process.
Mhm.
And then do you also, as a HOA, inform people as to what happens?
Right. The owners get letters from the HOA. They get, there's things posted on the trees themselves.
Mhm.
So there's plenty of notice.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay.
Can I ask a follow-up? Oh,
That's-
please, no, Carrie, go ahead.
Well, I'd imagine that the owners would share cost in the removal of these trees?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. This
Absolutely.
becomes part of the HOA.
By their dues.
Got it.
They pay dues every month.
Okay.
And it's gone into a fund, and that's what all the expenses come out of.
Right.
Thank you.
Valerie, this is the second time that we've seen tree removal for this property in less than a year. So, to build on the question about consensus, is there a master plan being considered for the landscape on the property?
A master plan for what?
The landscape, the
Yeah,
trees
we have landscapers, yeah. And we do things as they come up, like the trees or the bushes or plants or whatever needs to be done. The ground there, I'll have to say, is not real. It's not real thick. It's not like you could dig in it. It's a lot of pine needles and it's not real stable. So that's my concern if that tree goes. And I think if an arborist says it should go, I think it should go, period.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks very much.
So I think building on that, I would have a concern that, in another 6 months, it's 3 more trees. The 6 months after that, it's 3 more trees. And we just sort of go down this road and we have no I'm sorry. So my concern is that, we've seen the same property in less than a year and we're seeing a couple trees each time, and that we'll continue to see y'all every 6 to 8 months, and there'll be no trees left. So I'd really, and I think we expressed this last time we saw this property come to us, is that it would be great to see a master plan for. We have some trees that are at end of life or approaching end of life. Certainly along Covert Lane, I think there were some trees that were doing it. This is in the way back now, but I think there were some trees doing some damage to sidewalk. And what's the long-term strategy? And then I think as a board would have felt more comfortable green lighting. I think we ultimately did say yes to removing those trees, if I remember correctly. But, you do own a significant parcel in the city of Sebastopol, and there's a lot of trees there. And I think we'd feel more comfortable if we had a better horizon about the plan. Sure. Yeah.
That's a great suggestion.
Thank you. Thanks, Melissa. Did you have, Carrie, do you want to continue on, or?
No, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay. Melissa, any other comments, or?
I think I'm all right. Thank you.
Okay. So I guess one question I have is just in reading Merlin's report, he, as far as I can see, maybe I missed it, he's not recommending removal of the trees. He's just pointing out the problems. That's how I would read the report. And city arborists confirm some of those issues without recommending removal of the trees as well, but instead recommending some work be done, at least on the larger Doug fir. So I just want to sort of put that out there to clarify. It seems like we have two arborists who are putting forward similar issues, one from the HOA and one from the city. But as far as I can tell, there's not a recommendation to remove. Is that what you guys see? Yeah. Okay.
I would agree with that.
Okay. I just want to make that clear. I'm just referring to the reports, the two reports that we have. We have a report that was HOA brought forward, and then the city arborist, and comparing those two. So it's a good point of clarification, Mr. J. So the
Yes.
tulip tree came to us as one to be removed in the whole application, but then it was later determined, or after the application came in, that it's not big enough to warrant a permit to remove it. So the homeowners association can just remove it if they feel like it's warranted. Is that correct?
Correct, because the tulip tree is not listed as a native tree in our ordinance. The minimum size requirement would be a 20-inch diameter, and I believe the tulip is about 16 or 17 from the report. It's under that requirement. The native trees in this zoning district, anything greater than 10 inches in diameter require a tree removal permit, which is why you see that 17-inch Doug fir meeting the requirements to go through the tree removal permit process. So yes, the overall actions today is on the two Douglas firs. The tulip tree does not meet any of the criteria for the need to have a permit.
Right.
So it's up to the homeowners association to either keep that tree or they can remove it without a permit.
Right. So we're really we're talking about two Douglas firs
Correct.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have a question, Carrie?
I actually do. I do, John. And I'm just curious on the conclusion for the for Ben's arborist report. It says the small fir does not meet the code's criteria for granting a permit.
So it says fir as opposed to tulip.
What it says right here, the small fir, unless I'm reading that incorrectly, but it says the small fir does not meet the code's criteria for granting a permit. And then it says,
Yeah, so the code requires that you have to have certain findings in order to grant the permit, and it does not meet those. So you should not grant a permit because that would not be consistent with the code.
Yes. So he's recommending denial of the tree removal.
okay.
It requires a permit,
Yeah.
but then we can deny or approve that permit.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
To be clear. Yeah. Okay.
Large enough that it would need a permit to remove it, but it doesn't meet the criteria that the code outlines specifically that says it has to meet these in order to give it a permit.
Yes. Right. Okay. Thank you for that clarification, Ben.
Yeah.
So Valerie, we're sort of in board deliberation here. Do you have a comment that we haven't heard or that can add to the just
Those buildings were built in 1981. Those trees were there before they even were buildings. So I'm just saying, I'm just wondering how long a tree can live.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'm trying to get an idea of how old it is.
All right, thank you.
So in addition to the conclusion, it says here that it has a larger fir has a structural defect that's unlikely to fail under normal weather conditions within the next 2 years. So that's another, again, there's a professional arborist telling us that it's solid.
Yeah.
Do you know how long conifer trees live? That was what she was asking. She wants to know what age they live.
It's a living specimen. It's hard to
They
predict
live a
that.
few hundred years. How do you know where? I know because I studied trees
So,
all my life.
Okay.
Okay, it's not a time for public comment, please. Thank you. So any other board discussion or should Should we go ahead and make a motion?
We should make a motion.
All right, you want to go for it?
I move to deny the application for the removal of the trees.
A second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Can we call a vote?
Yep. Gary Bush,
Aye.
Vice Chair Ms. Henley,
Aye.
and Chair Lars Langberg.
Aye.
All right, so that motion passes with 3 ayes and 3 absence of Christine Level, Marshall Balfe, and Lynn Dietler. There is a 7-day appeal period for this, so that will start this afternoon and end 7 days. So next Tuesday, July 30th at 5 p.m. And if you want to make any appeals to this, that please needs to come to the planning department at 7120 Bodega Avenue before 5 p.m.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you to the applicant and the public for coming for this item. So we skipped over the planning department's report. John, if you'd like to give us any updates on the world out there.
Just for clarification, did we continue both
Right,
items
sorry.
B and C?
We didn't.
Okay, so we should do that before we get to the planning.
So
Department's
do we have to make a motion to continue, or it's just,
So you just open the item and continue as the chair. You can
Okay,
continue
got
the item to the next scheduled design review board meeting.
okay, thank you. So yeah, we have 2 other items on the agenda today. 7355 Healdsburg Avenue, a sign proposal permit, and then 230 Petaluma Avenue for Hop Monk, also a sign project. And because of the makeup of the board today, we did not have a quorum to hear those 2 items, so we assume they'll come at the next meeting. Would that be right?
Correct. Yes. So you'll be continuing item B on today's agenda for a sign permit at 7355 Healdsburg Avenue to the next scheduled design review board meeting. And you'll also be continuing agenda item 7C 230 Petaluma Avenue for a sign permit from the Hop Monk to the next design review board meeting, next scheduled design review board meeting.
Does that require a motion?
No.
Oh, okay.
So continued.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we've gone through our regular agenda. If we could then just do the planning department update.
Sure. So we've got a few things. This month, we had 2 stakeholder meetings for the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Grant, which is a grant that the city was awarded that looks at pedestrian and mobility updates and upgrades to the Main Street kind of downtown core area, which kind of goes from McKinley Street down to, I believe it's Willow on the south end, and then also extends over to Petaluma Avenue going east. This is kind of the very first public engagement. So we reached out to some of the folks in the Downtown Business Association because obviously they would be affected by this. We reached out to some members of our other boards and committees, as well as members of the public that have worked on previous kind of planning studies that have looked at this before. So that kind of that includes the SDAT report that was done a while back, as well as I believe we had some members that worked on the core project in years past before I was with the city. So if anybody in this group is still interested in being a part of kind of the newsletter group, please let me know and I can add your email to that list. The consultants will be developing a project website, and then we'll be also linking that to the city's website, so we can have kind of general information on that as far as what the project is, and then updates as it goes along through the full planning process. At the city council meeting for July 2nd, city council adopted the resolution for the Hotel Sebastopol development agreement, which extends their entitlements and permits for an additional 3 years. They're still having some difficulties getting funding and such for that project. They were hoping that within the last week or so to hear some good news about their federal loan that they had applied for, and looking for some other funding opportunities to get that project started, because I know that it's been in the works for a while. The city still wants to see it move forward, so we were amenable to approving that development agreement with that group. The Woodmark project on Bodega Avenue, I believe all 4 units on the front end are completed. They're just waiting for some final connections, I think some water connections and electricity from PG&E before they can start with occupancy in that. I will be working with the building official to do a final, as part of their final inspection, and landscaping inspection coming up here pretty soon. So excited about that. That is currently just phase 1. Phase 2, we don't have a timeline from them as far as moving forward on that, but hopefully it is fairly soon. Canopy project goes, we did meet with the developer today actually, and went over a project timeline for their building permit submittals, their final map submittals, and some of their other legal documents for the inclusionary housing and CCNRs and stuff like that. So we've got kind of a timeline in place. Some of that stuff is subject to change and whatnot. They're looking at, basically having building permits, hopefully building permit approval and site improvement approval by the end of this year. And then hopefully starting early next year into the vertical construction of their, they'll start the model units first, and then move on to the for sale units and work back around to the model units kind of being the last ones to finalize the project, and then it's fully complete. So I know there's a bunch of other stuff, but I'm currently blanking on it right now. We do have a couple items on the Planning Commission this evening after this meeting. City Council did add a additional item to the capital improvement plan that City Council approved at the July 2nd meeting. So that does need to come back to the Planning Commission for general plan consistency findings. That's pretty common on a yearly basis for the fiscal year budget. And we also have an item on there that is kind of an inspiration from this group. The Chair Fritz and I have been working together on developing a walking tour that was successful for this group, looking at past projects. And we'll be looking at kind of sites in town and, looking to see that currently they're not in compliance with our zoning code, but is that something that we want to discourage moving forward, or are we okay with amending the code to allow those types of uses and changes and stuff like that obviously work in the urban fabric that we live in, but like I said, currently there's a lot of zoning ordinance fixes that we have, and those, something to come out of that tour would be either expansion on that or kind of clarification on things in the future. So I think that's it. Like I said, I'm sure there's more, but.
What about the combination of the two boards? And apologies if you gave that update last meeting.
So that was kind of part of the discussion. The City Council did discuss that at their last meeting, July 16th, for the budget adoption component. I believe, and David was here and spoke to that, the boards and commissions part for the planning department's budget is coming back as a separate agenda item sometime in the future. So currently we will be operating under the status quo of, separate boards and commissions. And then moving forward with the direction from city council, we'll go from there. I would anticipate if they did make a decision this year, that we wouldn't have anything in place until the start of next year, because we do have to amend our local ordinance and municipal code for the creation of that group and how the group is made up, because both of these groups are adopted by an ordinance. So it's not something that we can just, change on the fly. It has to go through the formal process. So, and any ordinance adoption has to go through a 30-day adoption kind of period before it becomes implemented. So if they made a decision today, it would be 30 days from today before that ordinance would go into effect. So we're still kind of in flux right now. From my gathering of it, it looks like the city council might be in favor of doing a combination of the two. And if not, then I think we need to look at the order of operations for the three boards and commissions and city council goes as far as projects and how they go through the process, because design review at the end of the project does not
Makes no
make
sense.
sense. Yeah. So there's some inherent, issues if we kind of keep same.
Who's drafting the ordinance or the revision to the ordinance that would outline the structure of the boards and how the board would work?
Probably me.
Oh, you lucky duck.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have just a closet full of hats.
Well, so on that note, Mr. Acting Planning Director, are there any updates on the search for a planning director? Because if I'm not mistaken, our interim planning director is no longer our interim planning director.
Correct. Yes. David did leave last week on some circumstances. We do have another person lined up to come in the interim.
Okay.
And once that's finalized, we'll kind of let the rest of the boards and commissions know. But they are still actively recruiting for a full-time permanent position. But I have not heard of any potential applicants that they're considering as of right now.
If we keep going through planning directors, we're going to get a reputation in this town.
So that it's the city manager running that search?
Correct.
Or,
It's yeah.
or
city
city
manager
and
staff.
assistant city.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions for our lovely staff? Thank you.
Thank you
Fantastic.
very
And
much.
We'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Fireflies AI.
Well, it's yeah.
Here? Yeah, I saw that.